The warning came too late. Commander Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of Kepler Station, her coffee growing cold in her hand as she watched the data streams flood across the holographic displays. The numbers made no sense at first. Energy readings from Earth's core had spiked beyond anything natural. Temperature increases that should have taken millions of years were happening in minutes. Then the transmission arrived from Earth Defense Command. 6 words that changed everything. They hit us. Earth is dying. The Calthrine Dominion had struck without warning, without negotiation, without mercy. Their weapon was something humanity had only theorized about in their worst nightmares, a stellar conversion device buried deep beneath the Pacific Ocean by infiltrators over the past decade. When activated, it turned Earth's iron core into a runaway fusion reactor. Elena watched the feeds from Earth as cities burned. Not from explosions or bombs, but from the planet itself tearing apart, earthquakes measuring beyond the scale, volcanoes erupting across every continent simultaneously, the oceans boiling into steam. 12 billion people had minutes, maybe hours, before their world became uninhabitable. The Dominion broadcast their message across every frequency, ensuring every human colony and outpost received it clearly. Their spokesperson, a tall being with silver skin and too many joints in their arms, spoke with cold precision. Humanity has been identified as a developmental threat to galactic stability. Your homeworld has been neutralized. Your remaining populations will submit to Dominion authority or face similar consequences. You have one standard cycle to respond. Elena felt her hands shaking. Around her, the station crew stood frozen, faces pale with shock. Some were crying. Others simply stared at the screens showing Earth wrapped in fire and ash. She knew many of them had family down there, parents, children, friends. Everyone had someone on Earth. "Commander, what do we do?" Lieutenant Park's voice cracked. The young officer looked like he might collapse. Elena set down her coffee cup carefully. Her mind was racing, but years of military training kicked in. Emotions later. "Survival now. Get me Fleet Admiral Chen, emergency priority." She turned to face her crew. "And activate Project Exodus. Full implementation, now." The room went silent. Everyone knew about Project Exodus in theory. It was the doomsday scenario plan, discussed in classified briefings but never expected to be used. The plan assumed humanity might someday face extinction. The solution was simple and desperate. Send as many people as possible into deep space beyond any known civilization and hope they survived long enough to rebuild. "Commander, that's 1 million people. We don't have the ships ready. We don't have supplies for—" Park was listing problems, his voice rising. "We have what we have, Lieutenant. Start loading the sleeper ships. Prioritize scientists, engineers, doctors, teachers. Include genetic diversity data. Grab every database we can fit. We launch in 48 hours. 48 hours? That's impossible." Elena grabbed his shoulder firmly. "Earth is gone, Lieutenant. Mars and Europa will be next. The Dominion isn't here to conquer us. They're here to erase us. So we either do the impossible or we die. Choose." Park straightened up and nodded. "Yes, Commander. Activating Exodus protocols." The next 2 days blurred into a nightmare of desperate activity. Across the outer colonies, humanity's remaining leadership coordinated the largest evacuation in history. But they weren't evacuating to safety. They were evacuating into the unknown. The Dominion attacked Mars 17 hours after Earth fell. The colony domes shattered under orbital bombardment. 4 million dead in minutes. Europa Station went dark 6 hours after that. Titan sent a final transmission reporting Dominion ships in orbit before their signal cut out. At Kepler Station, Elena watched the sleeper ships load up. Each vessel was designed to hold 10,000 people in suspended animation. The original plan called for a fleet of 200 ships fully supplied, with redundant systems and careful preparation. Instead, they managed to launch 96 ships half-loaded, with whatever supplies they could grab. The people boarding didn't argue or complain. They moved in stunned silence. Most had watched their homeworld die on live feeds. Many had lost contact with family on Mars or Europa. They shuffled into the suspension chambers like ghosts, trusting that sleep and distance might somehow save them. Elena made the hardest decision of her life. Project Exodus needed a leader who would wake up every 50 years to check systems, adjust course, and make decisions. Someone had to guide these ships across centuries of travel into unexplored space. Someone had to sacrifice their normal life to ensure humanity survived. She recorded a message for her daughter on Europa. Except Europa was gone now. The message would never be received. She recorded it anyway, tears streaming down her face as she explained why she couldn't come home, why she had to leave, why she loved her so much. The fleet launched 3 hours before Dominion forces arrived at Kepler Station. 96 ships carrying just over 900,000 people jumped into faster-than-light travel on a course that pointed away from all known space. Away from civilization, trade routes, and explored systems, into the galactic frontier where no one would think to look for them. Elena watched from the command ship as the station she'd called home for 5 years exploded behind them. The Dominion was being thorough. They weren't just defeating humanity. They were erasing every trace. As the Exodus fleet vanished into the dark between stars, the Dominion broadcast their victory across the galaxy. Humanity had been eliminated as a threat. Their homeworld destroyed. Their colonies shattered. Their survivors scattered to the stellar winds, powerless and broken. The other civilizations watched and learned. The Dominion's message was clear. This is what happens to species that grow too quickly, that develop too fast, that might someday challenge the established order. Better to crush them early than risk competition later. In the depths of space, the Exodus fleet flew on in silence. Inside their ships, nearly 1 million humans slept, dreaming of Earth. They didn't know if they would ever wake. They didn't know if humanity had any future at all. But they were alive, and sometimes survival is enough to build on. 300 years passed in the galaxy like water flowing over stones, slowly wearing away the memory of what had been. The Calthrine Dominion grew fat with power. They absorbed the Veshan Commonwealth's outer territories. The Quinn Collective paid tribute rather than resist. Dozens of smaller species signed treaties that were really just surrender documents with fancy words. The Dominion's territory expanded across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy, thousands of worlds under their control. On their worlds, children learned about humanity in history classes. A cautionary tale. A warning. Here was a species that developed too quickly, reached for the stars too eagerly, and paid the price. The lesson was clear. Know your place or be destroyed. Far beyond the edges of mapped space, in a region the galaxy's civilizations had never bothered to explore, something else had grown. Dr. James Chen had never seen Earth. His great-great-grandmother had been on the Exodus fleet, one of the lucky ones who survived the journey. James was born on New Terra, the largest settlement humanity had built in exile. He grew up inside a hollowed asteroid under artificial sunlight, breathing recycled air. To him, this was normal. Earth was just a story, a dream his elders spoke about with tears in their eyes. He stood now in the central research facility, watching the final tests on humanity's greatest achievement. The void drive hummed with barely contained power, a sphere of twisted spacetime that glowed with colors that shouldn't exist. Power level stable, his assistant Maria called out. Quantum field alignment is holding at 99.7%. James nodded, making notes on his data pad. The void drive was the key to everything. Conventional faster-than-light travel used hyperspace lanes, fixed routes through folded space that the whole galaxy depended on. The lanes were predictable, which made them controllable. The Dominion had sensors on every major lane, monitoring traffic, controlling movement. The void drive didn't use the lanes. It created its own path through spacetime, jumping directly from point to point. Ships using it were invisible to conventional tracking. They could appear anywhere, anytime, with no warning. How long until we can fit these to the fleet? James asked. The first 100 ships are already equipped, Maria said. We'll have 500 combat-ready vessels within 6 months. James smiled despite himself. 500 ships. The entire Dominion Navy numbered over 50,000 vessels. By conventional military thinking, humanity was still hopelessly outnumbered. But conventional thinking didn't account for 3 centuries of desperate innovation. When the Exodus fleet had finally found this star system, they'd arrived with less than 800,000 survivors. The journey had been harder than anyone planned. Ships failed. Systems broke down. People died. But those who lived had something the old Earth civilization never had: absolute unity of purpose. There were no nations in the New Terran collective. No competing governments, no corporate interests pulling in different directions, no political parties fighting over philosophy while problems went unsolved. Everyone worked toward the same goal: survival and eventual return. Children in the collective didn't choose their careers based on passion or profit. They were tested, evaluated, and trained for whatever role served humanity best. James had shown aptitude for quantum physics at age 7. By 14, he was working on theoretical models. By 20, he was leading research teams. Now at 35, he was one of the lead scientists on the Void Drive project. Some called it cold, inhuman. A few of the older generation, those who remembered or had been taught about Earth's freedoms, complained quietly. But most understood. Humanity nearly died once. They couldn't afford the luxury of inefficiency. James walked through the research station toward the council chambers. The station was built inside a massive asteroid, its interior carved into a city of towers and platforms connected by transit tubes. 50 million people lived in this system across dozens of asteroids, stations, and 3 terraformed moons. Not many compared to the old Earth. But each one of them was educated to what used to be genius level. Each one was healthy, enhanced with genetic corrections that eliminated disease and extended lifespan. Each one was needed. The council met in a chamber at the station's core. 5 members elected for life who made the big decisions. James had been summoned to present his findings. Dr. Chen, Counselor Okafor, greeted him. She was old, nearly 200 years. Her body kept alive by medical technology that the Dominion didn't have. Your report indicated the Void Drive is operational. Show us. James activated the holographic display. A map of known space appeared, showing the Dominion's territory in red. We can strike anywhere in their empire within hours. They have no defense against technology they can't detect. And our fleet capacity, Counselor Zhang asked. 500 ships within 6 months, each one more advanced than anything the Dominion has. Our weapons use gravity manipulation to achieve relativistic kill speeds. Our shields operate on quantum probability fields. Our computing is entangled across all ships, creating a networked intelligence. Counselor Volkov, the military representative, studied the data with sharp eyes. 500 against 50,000. Poor odds. Respectfully, Counselor, you're thinking in conventional terms, James said. We don't need to fight their entire fleet at once. We can appear, strike, and vanish before they respond. We can target their infrastructure, their supply lines, their command centers. We can fight a war they're not prepared for. The question isn't whether we can fight, Counselor Okafor said quietly. It's whether we should. We've survived here. We're safe. Why risk everything to return? The chamber went silent. It was the question many had been asking as humanity's technology advanced. Why go back? Why not just stay hidden and live in peace? James thought of the stories his grandmother told him. Earth's oceans, real sunlight on your face, cities under open sky, an entire world to live on. Not just carved rocks in space. He thought of the 12 billion who died. He thought of Mars, Europa, all the colonies erased. Because they're still there, he said finally. The Dominion. Still conquering, still destroying species that don't submit. We survived. Others might not. And because Earth, even scarred and broken, is still ours, our homeworld, we didn't travel 300 years through darkness just to hide forever. Counselor Okafor looked at each of her fellow council members. One by one they nodded. Then we vote, she said. All in favor of Operation Homecoming? 5 hands rose, unanimous. Dr. Chen, prepare your ships. Humanity is going home. James left the chamber feeling a strange mix of excitement and dread. They were really doing this. After 3 centuries of hiding, of building, of preparing, they would finally face the enemy that tried to erase them. The Dominion thought humanity was gone. Extinct or reduced to powerless refugees. They were about to learn otherwise. The Dominion patrol ship Enforcer of Peace had been monitoring the border region for 3 years without incident. Captain Vrel found the duty boring but safe. Nothing ever happened this far from the core worlds. Pirates occasionally wandered through. Sometimes a lost merchant ship needed directions. Mostly it was just empty space and routine sensor sweeps. When the human ship appeared, Vrel thought his sensors were malfunctioning. Contact bearing 270, distance 50,000 kilometers. His sensor officer reported, voice uncertain. Captain, it didn't come through the hyperspace lane. It just appeared. Vrel studied the display. The ship was small by Dominion standards, maybe 100 meters long. Sleek design, no obvious weapons ports, no identification markings, and it had appeared in normal space without using the standard faster-than-light approach. That was impossible. Every species used the hyperspace lanes. It was the only way to travel between stars. Hail them. Standard identification request. The communications officer tried multiple frequencies. No response. The strange ship just hung there in space, motionless as if waiting for something. Vrel felt his skin prickle with unease. Something was wrong. Tactical charge weapons. Shield up. Captain, scanners are having trouble getting a clear read on their hull. The signature keeps shifting like they're using some kind of cloaking field, the sensor officer said. No one has cloaking technology, Vrel snapped. Recalibrate your sensors. Before the officer could respond, the human ship vanished. Not into hyperspace with the telltale energy signature, not moving at sublight speeds that sensors could track. It simply ceased to exist in that location. Vrel stared at the empty space where the ship had been. What just happened? Unknown, Captain. No energy signature detected. No hyperspace window. The ship is just gone. Vrel immediately sent a report to Dominion Command. Unknown vessel, unknown technology, unknown capabilities. 3 days later, he received orders to maintain heightened alert status. A week after that, similar reports came from patrol ships across 3 sectors. Human ships appearing without warning, observing Dominion forces, then vanishing without a trace. The reports climbed the chain of command until they reached the High Council on the Dominion homeworld. The counselors dismissed the first few reports as sensor errors or crew hallucinations, but as reports multiplied, as evidence accumulated, denial became impossible. Humans were alive. Humans had ships. Humans had technology that shouldn't exist. The Dominion military mobilized 500 warships and sent them to investigate. Whatever humans survived, they needed to be eliminated. Quickly and completely this time. Meanwhile, Captain Sarah Okonkwo watched the Dominion fleet movements from her ship's command center. The NTC vessel Remembrance hung in a stable void jump, existing partially outside normal space. Completely invisible to conventional sensors. They're pulling ships from border patrol duties, her tactical officer reported. Consolidating forces. Looks like they're planning a strike. Sarah nodded slowly. She was 42 years old, born and raised in the collective, and she'd trained her whole life for military service. Her parents had been soldiers. Her grandparents had been soldiers. 3 centuries of humanity preparing for this moment had produced people like her. Disciplined, intelligent, and absolutely committed to the mission. Mark their fleet composition and send it back to command. Then we moved to the next observation point. The Remembrance jumped to a position near a major Dominion shipyard. Sarah watched through enhanced optics as massive vessels were constructed in orbital dry docks. The Dominion had been building its military for 3 centuries without serious opposition. The ships were huge, bristling with weapons, armored like fortresses. Think we can take them? Her executive officer asked quietly. Sarah considered the question. 1-on-1? Maybe. We're faster, more advanced, but they have numbers. 50,000 ships to our 500. She smiled slightly. Good thing we're not planning to fight fair. The diplomatic team made first contact with the Veshan Commonwealth 2 weeks later. Ambassador David Torres led the delegation, arriving at the Veshan capital via conventional shuttle, rather than appearing mysteriously from nowhere. No need to scare potential allies. The Veshan parliament consisted of representatives from 7 species who had banded together for mutual protection decades ago. They existed in the Dominion's shadow, paying tribute, accepting oversight, but maintaining nominal independence. It was a delicate balance that kept them alive but barely free. When the human delegation entered the parliamentary chamber, the assembled representatives went silent. Humans were supposed to be extinct. Seeing them walk through the doors was like seeing ghosts. Ambassador Torres stepped forward, his posture relaxed but confident. Honored representatives, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I know our presence is unexpected. I apologize for any shock our survival may cause. Prime Minister Thav of the Veshans, a being with blue-gray skin and large eyes, found his voice first. The Dominion told us humanity was destroyed. 300 years ago. We have historical records of Earth's fall. Earth fell, Torres agreed. 12 billion dead. Our colonies destroyed, but some of us escaped. We've been rebuilding far from known space. Now we've returned. Why? Thav asked bluntly. Why come back? The Dominion will try to finish what they started. We're aware. In fact, we're counting on it. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Torres waited for silence before continuing. The Dominion destroyed our world because they feared competition. They saw us developing quickly and decided to eliminate the threat. But in trying to kill us, they created something much more dangerous to them. They gave us 3 centuries of motivation. He activated a holographic display showing technical data on collective ships, weapons, and capabilities. The representatives leaned forward, studying the information with growing amazement. This is beyond our technology, Thav said slowly. Beyond the Dominions as well, if these specifications are accurate. They're accurate. We've had 300 years with no distractions, no political divisions, no competing interests, just survival and development. We've surpassed the Dominion in every significant technology. Then why come to us? If you're so advanced, why do you need allies? Torres smiled. We don't need allies for military strength. We need allies because we're not conquerors. We're not here to replace the Dominion's empire with our own. We're here to reclaim what was stolen from us and to ensure no other species suffers what we suffered. But to do that effectively, we need information. Intelligence on Dominion military deployments, economic systems, political structures. We need to know where to strike to dismantle their empire with minimal casualties. The chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives argued for caution. The Dominion was powerful, vindictive. Helping humans might bring destruction on the Commonwealth. Others saw opportunity. The Dominion had grown more oppressive over the centuries. Tribute demands increased yearly. Dominion oversight became Dominion control, slowly strangling their independence. Thav called for order. What exactly are you asking from us? Information sharing. Nothing more. We'll provide technical data on Dominion movements we've observed. You provide context, background, intelligence your centuries of proximity have gathered. We'll strike the Dominion where it hurts them most. You maintain plausible deniability. When the Dominion falls, the Commonwealth will be positioned to thrive in the new order. And if you fail? If the Dominion defeats you? Torres met his eyes steadily. They killed our world. They murdered 12 billion of our people. They hunted survivors like animals. Ambassador, humanity doesn't have a backup plan. We win or we die. There is no failure option. The vote took 3 days. In the end, the Commonwealth agreed to share intelligence, carefully, quietly, through secure channels. They would help humanity strike at the Dominion, but they would do it from the shadows. Sarah received the intelligence package 2 weeks later. Dominion fleet positions, supply routes, command structures, political hierarchies. Everything the Commonwealth knew, laid out in detail. She forwarded it to command along with her report on Dominion military movements. Then she waited for orders. The orders came quickly. Prepare for combat operations. The war was about to begin. Admiral Krell commanded the largest battle fleet the Dominion had assembled in over a century. 500 warships, from nimble corvettes to massive dreadnoughts, all converging on the coordinates where human ships had been detected. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, feeling supremely confident. 50 ships had been spotted in the region. 50 against 500. The humans were either desperate or stupid. Either way, they would die. All ships report ready, Admiral, his tactical officer announced. Krell nodded. Send the message on all frequencies. Give them one chance to surrender. The communications array broadcast across every channel. Human vessels, you are surrounded and outnumbered. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your complete destruction. You have 5 minutes to comply, silence answered. The human ships hung in space near the Hadrian Nebula, 50 small vessels arranged in a loose sphere formation. They didn't power down. They didn't respond. They simply waited. Time's up, Krell said when the 5 minutes elapsed. All ships, weapons free. Destroy them. The Dominion fleet surged forward, energy weapons charging, missiles loading. 500 ships against 50. It would be a massacre. Then the human ships moved. Commander Marcus Webb watched the battle unfold from his command nexus deep inside the Retribution. He didn't stand on a bridge looking at view screens like commanders in the old stories. He floated in a tank of neural gel, connected directly to the ship's quantum computer network, experiencing the battle through pure data streams fed directly into his brain. Marcus saw the Dominion fleet as patterns of energy and mass, probability clouds and tactical vectors. His consciousness extended across all 50 human ships simultaneously through quantum-entangled communication, turning the fleet into a single distributed organism with 50 bodies. Initiating engagement protocols, he thought, and his thought became action. The human ships flickered out of normal space and back in, void drives jumping them across the battlefield in microseconds. They appeared behind Dominion vessels, fired, and vanished before return fire could be targeted. The weapons they used weren't lasers or plasma bolts. They were kinetic kill vehicles accelerated to relativistic speeds by gravity manipulation, chunks of dense metal moving at 90% the speed of light. When they hit Dominion shields, they didn't splash against energy barriers. They punched through like bullets through paper. The first salvo destroyed 17 Dominion ships in 3 seconds. Admiral Krell grabbed his command chair as his ship shuddered from nearby explosions. What just happened? Sir, the humans are jumping. Short-range teleportation. Our targeting systems can't lock onto them. They're moving faster than our computers can track. Another salvo. 23 more Dominion ships vanished in blooms of fire and debris. The human vessels danced through the battlefield, appearing and disappearing, each shot perfectly placed, each maneuver calculated with inhuman precision. All ships, scatter formation. Don't cluster together, Krell shouted into his communications array, but scattering made them individually vulnerable. The human ships targeted isolated vessels, appearing beside them, firing and vanishing before help could arrive. The Dominion fleet's numerical advantage became meaningless when they couldn't bring their weapons to bear. Marcus processed the battle at computational speeds. His tactical AI identified weaknesses in Dominion shield harmonics. His quantum predictive algorithms calculated Dominion movement patterns 3 seconds before they happened. His ships struck where the enemy would be, not where they were. It wasn't combat. It was mathematics, and the equation was solving itself in humanity's favor. Enemy flagship attempting to withdraw. One of his sub-commanders reported through the neural link. Negative. No survivors. No witnesses except what we choose to broadcast. The retribution appeared directly in front of the Eternal Dominance, so close that the ship's shields crackled against each other. For a moment, Marcus could see through his ship's sensors into the Dominion bridge. He saw Admiral Krell's face, saw the realization in his eyes that this was the end. The gravitational lance fired. The Dominion flagship broke in half. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 500 Dominion ships were debris fields. Some had been destroyed by kinetic weapons. Others had been torn apart when human gravity manipulators crushed their hulls like tin cans. A few had tried to jump to hyperspace and flee, but the collective ships had some kind of interdiction field that prevented it. They were trapped until the humans decided they could leave. None were decided worthy to leave. Marcus disconnected from the command nexus, emerging from the gel tank into the medical bay. Tex helped him into a chair while his nervous system readjusted to controlling only his own body. The transition was always disorienting, like going from being a god to being merely human again. Casualty report? He asked, his voice hoarse. 0, the medical officer replied. We didn't lose a single ship. Minor shield damage to 3 vessels. That's it. Marcus nodded slowly. The battle had been so one-sided it barely qualified as a fight. 3 centuries of desperate advancement had created a technological gap too wide to bridge. The Dominion's military might as well have been throwing rocks. Broadcast the entire engagement across all frequencies, Marcus ordered. Every civilization in the galaxy needs to see this. The recording went out on every communication channel humans could access. The Commonwealth received it. Neutral species picked it up. Within days, it would reach the Dominion core worlds. Everyone would see what happened when the Dominion's seemingly invincible fleet met humanity's return. On the Dominion homeworld, the High Council watched the recording in stunned silence. 500 ships destroyed. 500, without the humans suffering a single loss. It was impossible. It was unthinkable. High Counselor Thren, the eldest member, finally spoke. How do we fight an enemy we cannot hit? The military commander, General Vax, stared at the tactical display. We can't, not with conventional tactics. Our fleet was using standard engagement protocols against an enemy that doesn't follow any known combat doctrine. They're fighting a kind of war we don't know how to counter. Then we need to adapt quickly. Adaptation requires time we may not have. The humans just demonstrated they can destroy our fleets at will. How long before they strike at our worlds? As if in answer, a message arrived through diplomatic channels. Short, direct, and terrifying in its simplicity. To the Calthrine Dominion High Council. You destroyed our homeworld and murdered 12 billion of our people. You declared your intention to erase humanity from existence. We have returned to reclaim what was stolen, and to ensure you never threaten another species again. Withdraw from all former human territories. Pay reparations for the worlds you destroyed. Submit your leaders for trial for genocide. You have 30 days to begin compliance. Refusal will result in the systematic dismantling of your empire. We will not negotiate. We will not compromise. We will not forgive. Signed, the New Terran Collective. Thren read the message 3 times. They're demanding we surrender. They want us to dismantle our own empire. What choice do we have? Another counselor asked. They just destroyed 500 ships in 6 hours. We have 2,000 ships in the home fleet. We have fortifications. We have planetary defenses. We hold the advantage on our own territory. Vax shook his head. The humans didn't use their full capabilities at Hadrian's Vale. They were testing us, studying our tactics. Imagine what they could do if they committed their entire fleet to a sustained campaign. Are you suggesting we surrender? Thren demanded. The Dominion has never surrendered. We rule 3 spiral arms. We are the supreme power in known space. We were the supreme power, Vax corrected quietly. Now we're just the species that humanity is about to destroy. The council argued for hours. Some wanted to fight, believing Dominion's strength and numbers would prevail eventually. Others wanted to negotiate to find a compromise that preserved some dignity. In the end, pride won over wisdom. The Dominion sent their response. The Calthrine Dominion does not surrender to inferior species. We reject your demands. Come if you dare. We will be waiting. The message reached Marcus 3 days later. He read it, felt no satisfaction or anger, and began planning the next phase of operations. The Dominion wanted a war. Humanity would give them one, but not the war they expected. The war lasted 3 months, but calling it a war was generous. It was more like systematic dismantlement. The Dominion expected grand battles, massive fleet engagements where their numerical superiority would eventually grind down the human forces. They prepared their home fleet, fortified their core worlds, and waited for the human armada to appear. The humans never came. Instead, they appeared at the edges. A supply depot servicing 3 sectors vanished in fire. Communication relay stations went dark. Automated mining facilities stopped sending resources. The Dominion's vast infrastructure, built to support an empire spanning thousands of worlds, began failing piece by piece. The home fleet couldn't defend everything at once. Every time they sent ships to investigate an attack, the humans were already gone. Every time they tried to pursue, their ships found empty space. The void drive technology meant the collective could strike anywhere and be nowhere. Ghosts that killed and vanished. General Vax watched his empire crumble from his command center. Reports flooded in hourly. Another shipyard destroyed. Another governor assassinated by human infiltration teams. Another rebellion on a subjugated world. Emboldened by news that the mighty Dominion was bleeding. We've lost contact with the entire 4th sector, an aide reported. All communication relays are down. We don't know if the sector is even under our control anymore. Vax studied the strategic map with growing despair. Red zones indicating lost or contested territory were spreading like a disease. The Dominion was too big, too spread out. They couldn't protect everything, and the humans had 3 centuries of intelligence on Dominion operations. They knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum disruption with minimal force. Send the home fleet to... Vax started to order. Sir, if we send the home fleet away from our core worlds, what stops the humans from attacking here while we're gone? Vax had no answer. That was the impossible choice the humans had forced on them. Defend everything and defend nothing, or concentrate forces and lose the empire. Meanwhile, on worlds across Dominion space, something else was happening. Revolution. The species the Dominion had conquered and subjugated for centuries saw their oppressors weakening. They saw human ships appear and vanish, saw Dominion forces scrambling in confusion, saw the illusion of invincibility shatter. On dozens of worlds, rebellions erupted. Some were coordinated with human support. Others were spontaneous, born from decades of resentment finally seeing an opportunity. The Dominion's military tried to suppress the uprisings, but they were stretched too thin. Every ship sent to crush a rebellion was a ship that couldn't defend against human raids. The empire was collapsing under its own weight. 3 months after the Battle of Hadrian's Vale, the Dominion High Council met in an emergency session. Half the counselors were missing. either dead in human strikes or trapped on worlds that had lost contact with the capital. "We cannot win this war," Vax said flatly. "We don't even know how to fight it. The humans are destroying us without engaging in a single major battle. Our economy is collapsing. Our subject species are rebelling. Our fleet is exhausted from chasing enemies they can't catch." "Then what do you propose?" Thran asked, his voice hollow. The elderly counselor looked like he'd aged decades in 3 months. "We surrender, completely and unconditionally. We accept their terms and hope they show more mercy than we showed them." The council sat in defeated silence. Finally, Thran nodded. "Send the message." The Dominion's surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. They agreed to all human demands: complete military disarmament, dissolution of their imperial government, war crimes trials for those responsible for Earth's destruction, and reparations to be paid from the vast wealth the Dominion had accumulated over centuries. For the first time in the Dominion's history, they had been decisively defeated. Not by a stronger empire, but by a species they had tried to erase. Elena Vasquez was 347 years old when she returned to Earth. Medical technology kept her alive, but nothing could make her young again. She walked slowly, leaning on a support cane as she descended from the shuttle. The planet looked different from her memories. The scars of the Dominion's attack were still visible. Oceans were smaller, continents reshaped by the geological chaos of a dying core, but life was returning. The collective had stabilized Earth's core using technology that would have seemed like magic to the old civilizations. Atmosphere processors were slowly cleaning the air. Genetic seed banks were being used to restore extinct species. In a few more centuries, Earth might be truly alive again. Sarah Okonkwo walked beside Elena, having volunteered to escort the old commander. "What do you think?" Sarah asked quietly. "It's beautiful," Elena said, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. "Still beautiful, even broken. I never thought I'd see it again." They walked through what had once been a city. Now it was ruins slowly being reclaimed by engineered plants designed to break down the damaged structures and convert them to fertile soil. New buildings were rising in some areas, constructed by the first wave of returning colonists. Humanity was coming home. Not all of them. The collective settlements in deep space were staying occupied. The refugee population scattered across the galaxy had built their own communities. But Earth was being restored, reclaimed, brought back to life. "I keep thinking about them," Elena said. "The 12 billion. All those people who died here. Children who never grew up. Parents who never saw their kids again. Lovers separated forever. An entire world of lives cut short. We avenged them," Sarah said. "Did we?" Elena looked at the younger woman. "We defeated the Dominion. We dismantled their empire. But those 12 billion are still dead. Victory doesn't bring them back." They reached a memorial site, one of hundreds being constructed across the planet. A massive wall of crystalline material held the names of every person who died when Earth fell. 12 billion names inscribed in text so small you needed magnification to read individual entries. Elena found her daughter's name, traced it with trembling fingers. "We gave them meaning," Sarah said after a long silence. "Their deaths led to our survival. Their sacrifice, unwilling as it was, bought time for the Exodus fleet to escape. Because they died, we lived. Because we lived, we came back stronger. Because we came back stronger, we freed dozens of species from Dominion tyranny. Their deaths weren't meaningless, Commander. They were the foundation we built our future on." Elena nodded slowly. "I hope you're right. I hope they would see it that way." Across the galaxy, the new order was taking shape. The Dominion's former territory fragmented into dozens of independent nations as conquered species claimed their freedom. Some were peaceful. Others descended into conflict as old grievances surfaced. The collective sent peacekeeping forces, helped negotiate treaties, and provided humanitarian aid where needed. But they didn't conquer. They didn't rebuild the Dominion with themselves at the top. In the collective council chambers, now relocated to a station orbiting Earth, the 5 counselors debated humanity's role in the galaxy. "We have the power to rule," Counselor Zhang argued. "Our technology is centuries ahead of anyone else. Our military is unmatched. We could bring order to the entire galaxy if we chose to." "We could," Counselor Okafor agreed. "But should we?" The Dominion thought they were bringing order. They thought they were protecting galactic stability. They justified genocide as necessary for the greater good. If we follow that path, what makes us different from them? James Chen, recently appointed to the council to replace a retiring member, spoke up. We're different because we remember what it's like to be powerless. We remember watching our world die while others stood by. We remember being hunted, scattered, nearly erased. That memory has to mean something. It has to inform what we become. So what do you propose? Volkov asked. We have 500 systems in our direct control, but we have influence across thousands. How do we use that influence? We protect, James said firmly. We defend species who can't defend themselves. We prevent other empires from rising to replace the Dominion. We share technology carefully, helping others advance without overwhelming them. We remember that power without wisdom leads to atrocity, and we make sure we never forget that lesson. The debate continued for weeks, but gradually a consensus emerged. The collective would be guardians, not rulers. They would maintain the strongest military in the galaxy, not for conquest but for protection. They would help younger species develop, but wouldn't force their way of life on others. They would remember Earth's fall, and let that memory guide them toward being better than their enemies. 50 years after humanity's return, Elena Vasquez died peacefully in her sleep on Earth. She was laid to rest in the soil of her homeworld, beneath a tree grown from genetic samples preserved in the Exodus fleet. Thousands attended her funeral, representing dozens of species. The epitaph on her memorial read simply, "She saved us all." Commander Marcus Webb, retired from military service, stood before a classroom of young cadets at the new Terran Naval Academy. They were the next generation, children born after the war who would inherit the galaxy their parents had fought to reshape. The Dominion made a mistake 300 years ago, Marcus told them. They thought destroying Earth would destroy humanity. They thought they could erase us like we never existed. But they forgot something important. He paused, looking at the eager young faces. You can destroy a world. You can kill billions. You can scatter survivors to the stellar winds. But you can't destroy an idea. You can't kill the human spirit. You can't erase the fundamental truth of what we are. Survivors, builders, dreamers who refuse to give up no matter how dark things get. The Dominion broke us. Then they left us alone in the dark to die. Instead, we used that darkness to rebuild ourselves into something they never imagined, something they couldn't defeat. Remember that lesson. Remember that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons or even our unity. It's our refusal to accept defeat. It's our ability to look at impossible odds and say, so what? It's our determination to survive and thrive no matter what the galaxy throws at us. The cadets listened in rapt attention. Some would become soldiers. Others scientists, diplomats, explorers, but all would carry forward the legacy of those who survived Earth's destruction and returned more powerful than before. In the centuries that followed, humanity spread across the galaxy not as conquerors but as partners. They helped rebuild war-torn worlds. They mediated disputes between species. They defended the weak against the strong. The memory of Earth's fall became a cornerstone of human culture, a reminder of both their vulnerability and their resilience. And on Earth itself, now restored to life after centuries of terraforming, children played under blue skies and swam in clean oceans, never knowing how close they came to never existing at all. They thought Earth was gone. They thought humanity was finished. They were wrong. Humanity came back, and the galaxy would never be the same.